direct right now. Boom! Live and direct on the Tru-Mon show with my brother Arthur and sister Fiona from Australia. How are you? That's the last one. That's the last one for a while. We won't see each other now for a while after this one. So I just want to tell people also that, listen, it's going to be, we're going to do like a recap a bit of everything that we have talked about. And also remedy concerning it, and that's what we're about. We're about remedy, and there's been great comments that came on the channel. And me, I read all the comments. I do not reply to comments. Basically, I do not reply to comments for one good reason: is I like to come live either alone or with others and talk about the comments that people leave. I'm not a big writer also, and I give thanks for everybody that leave comments. I read them all, I publish them all, but yeah, I like to come live and direct to talk about it. And Shalom Gagenspuff, that's his name, left a great comment, many comments after the following of our shows together. Like, some people are really getting it, and to the core of it, like, that's what transpired in this text, but that's another thing in real life also. What you know, that's where we have to walk the talk also. It's good to talk like this, to comment, but what kind of thing are we doing in real life? And this is what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm just going to start with his comments, Arthur and Fiona. And if you don't mind, during that time, you can eat your salad. You said you were eating a salad. So that's great. So that's a great timing.
We're coming live from Cristian, which is sort of like a department of Dr. Frankenstein's industrial services. And next door to us over here is a spare parts department. And we carry a lot of body parts for people who want replacements when they realize that their life has been fake all their lives and they haven't got a real life. So we're actually eating green salads from the Cafe Cristian garden out the back there. And so apologies for us eating. We've been moving wood chip outside and we've been rushing because this man woke up late. Had a good sleep last night.
Yeah, and it's garden season for you guys. It started. It's the opposite of me. Me, I'm going into winter. You're going into summer. You're going in spring. You're in spring right now. Soon, in a few weeks, spring. So it's a bit weird because it's the inverse of here. But yeah, that's the beauty of life. Is there lots of mysteries, and we have to keep the mysteries of life. I was thinking about that today. I'm like, I look at everything around, they have defined everything, and all the birds are names, everything is defined. It's like there's no more mystery, everything has a name, and this is what drives me nuts sometimes. And I try to disassociate from the words and the definition, and that's why I said in one video this week that we're lost in words and definition so much. And English is one of the main language, like we say all the time.
Yeah,
so, one world Shalom. Yeah, that's it.
One world government language is the way they're going to bring everyone into the one world system, and because they need a common denominator, right? So it's very interesting how, like in Australia, they're using corporations to take ownership or claim title over all the lands of what we now call the Commonwealth of Australia, and they can't even begin to pull off the new order unless they put that in place. That's a plank. That's one plank. So there are many planks that they have been putting into place before they can deliver their final blow of the grand plan. So there's no accident that we have English as the new world language that they labeled back in the 1100s of their history book. So yeah, welcome. We're no longer in their dark ages. When we wake up, it's their dark ages, not our dark ages.
Exactly.
And then it comes back to the goodness and the charity and the kindness of our hearts, each of us, using this darkness, this defined fake reality, to communicate and reach brothers and sisters. So we've got to sense those intentions. That's why we sense you. We sense where you're coming from, you know. We sense all our friends. Jabba, there's so many friends I'm going to mention. I could mention, you know, there's no point because I don't want to not miss someone out. But it's all in the intent. It all comes back to the intent of our heart and how much we use that to keep climbing out of this in this life and build that bridge with others. That's the kingdom of the mudroom, with the bridge being the mudroom, where we work together. And then we, the goal has always been that we set each other free from being underneath each other in this life. It's not about following anyone. No one's here to follow us. No, we are not leaders. You are not leaders. None of us are leaders. We're just inspirers of truth, and to evoke that sense of, my God, I don't want to live like this because it means I need a world of slaves around me to live this lie. So to destroy this thing, we have to build a bridge where we're no longer working together as slaves. We're working together as team players to recreate the dream of life, to set everyone free in the dream of life, and no one is answerable to another man because you've got a conscience. And when you're conscious, you wouldn't want to harm another brother. You wouldn't want to covet another man, which we do when we define children with a fake reality. So, you know, it's all about this. This is only what it's about. It's not about anything else. So, yeah, see our lives, your life, our life, all of us who watch these videos, who are inspired, and those who haven't watched these videos, who've been exposed to these insights, is that each of us has a pick, and we're chipping away at the coalface of this system of lying, and we're smashing it and smashing it and smashing it until not only are we free of carrying this fake persona, but we're inspiring everyone else around us to no longer carry that fake persona, to live and hold up the system that enslaves us all.
And so, the vortex of lies, it's only us doing it, inflating it all the time and giving it energy. We are producing that vortex. We are producing that vortex, literally. I think it's like we said, it's us doing the stuff, and very often even all the evil stuff, the rituals that they want us to perform on their behalf, they don't even do it themselves. Like eating meat and stuff. People that are conscious of their health, they don't eat meat. No? What do you think about that? Do you think they still eat blood and stuff to keep that energy, or they're conscious to a point that they can let us do the dirty work and they have the clear conscience?
I think they do. I think they still do stuff. I mean, they do keep certain things, parts of the curse, away from them, like money. You'll find the really big players, they never handle money, they never touch money, they never own money. Usually don't own things. Everything's owned in trusts and administration, so they don't have that curse of the ownership and the money. But I think they're so warped. There's a certain really warped sense of their thinking that they are doing these black magic sort of rituals to keep up the energy. But certainly what you're saying is true. They do encourage us to do all the stuff, so to generate that energy for them.
There is in the grand plan, the way that this man senses what this plan has been, is that they've used the occults. They've used all the satanic rituals, all the ritual sacrificing that we refer to in Darkness Visible Part 5, and look at those photos, and how they capture the trauma of a crucified, broken will man, as in a child, teenager, adult, animals. They break the will because it's in the atmosphere of the broken will that the bloodletting and blood libel of the English language, they write with the blood of those broken wills. So they have been doing this intentionally, but that is not the outcome. The only reason that they've been doing all this is to break the will of all of man, to bring all man onto their knees all across earth. So that we have to devastate the living dream of man's life, as in the Amazon, the oceans. We have to poison and wreck it. We have to wreck the mountain. We've got to wreck everything. We've got to wreck relationships, wreck tribes. Everything must be wrecked, because in this ritual, this satanic ritual, when they can bring everyone to their knees, there's a new generation of these children that come out of these occultic families, these bloodline families, the Sasha Stones, and all the others that are these. The new leaders, the new ones, are going to come bring remedy to the chaos. See, the New World Order is not this current satanic black shit going down. That's not the New World Order. It's the preparation for the launching pad for the New World Order to take off, because the New World Order is going to be the goodness of man's heart, all coming together as one, bringing us all back so damn close to truth, but not close enough that we all accept that we need the protection of a federation of these Freemasons and each other to keep us from ever harming each other again, from doing the wrong things, but we're still answerable to them. We're still answerable to others. So it will be the system, the New World Order, that will look fantastic and look wonderful, which Prince William will bring in. It's no doubt Prince William's been set up for this, unless they switch this again and bring someone else in. But to me, Prince William, Dona Spencer's eldest, is the one who will bring the magic wand to say, we are going to stop this madness. We're going to stop it. And with one flick of the magic wand, the Freemasons have their finger on the pulse of everything and everything going wrong for all industries, for all institutions, for all societies everywhere. It just magically.
So do you mean when he become? Do you mean when he become king? Do you mean when he become king, it's gonna take effect?
It'll be something just like out of the Star Trek Federation. When you watch Star Trek and you see the Federation in the background, it'll be a united front, but there has to be someone, a focal point, someone like a savior, a messiah. It has to come up, because people who have had a broken will all across Earth, have all been broken, will be easily manipulated to accept and raise up a savior, someone. But that is an institution, a federation behind it. And it's this that is their greatest plan. So they came to all the men on the land who already had their living dreams, right? And the man on land with the kindness of the heart, instead of going, oh, look, we see what your intentions are. We're going to blow your ships, destroy you, murder the lot of you. Don't let our children see any of this. Compost you all and let you go, right? Which is what your immune system would do with anything that comes in to harm and take your life. They, with the goodness of their heart, probably thought, well, we're going to take them on, embrace them, bring them in, which is, I would suspect, because you're talking about conscious man. He's seeing these UFOs and these weirdos coming with gobbledygook Martian talk across the oceans with this system agenda. So why did they embrace them? Why did they welcome them? Why, in their goodness of their heart, living in paradise the way they were living, pre the firmament, we're talking about pre-killing animals, pre-cannibalism, pre-all this stuff, before all this inculcation through our breath that we're breathing was going on. So we're talking about pre-tribes in New Guinea. We're talking about pre-tribes in the Amazons where they're running around with darts and poison darts. This is all of this before man was even doing any of this stuff. Because they're all byproducts of the first time this occultic one world system was attempted. And all the residue effects is what you see in these tribes. So don't get too confused by their color and their skin. You just got to use your sense and see the bigger picture. So what I'm getting at is the New World Order is the celebration of man's glory, of man's heart, set to the system of federation, of unity, of oneness, of one earth, right? And it's a scam, because it'll be a quota system. And this quota system is no different to the serfs and commoners who are under landlords and land barons in the what we now call the dark age of the medieval, and going right back through all these periods, right? Where you had to go to the landholder and ask them, can you have a tithing of land? And usually an arrangement's made where you've got to work for the landlord, whether you provide a percentage of your produce, whether you provide that being animals, or which you provide to the castle of your master, or you're asked to be the cleaner and the painter and the worker and the labourer for the castle and all the other projects that the landlord, land baron families want, or whether you go to war to fight for your landlord and land baron. And remember this too, that these landlords and land barons, when they went to war, all these guys are all talking to each other in old Latin, old French, in old Greek, old Hebrew. And the serfs and commoners would not know any of this stuff. So it's all going over their heads like gobbledygook, while all their generals and admirals and all that are talking in this wonderland, gobbledygook Martian talk. So it's that kind of scenario where people refer to as common law. It was the commoners' law under the power of the landlords. There was never freedom for the commoners, the serfs. And this is exactly what the New World Order is under a quota system, except you won't be looking at landlords. You won't be looking at military control. The end game is that no one needs any weapons anymore. We don't need to have armies and all this. It will simply be an invisible cage of the good-hearted accepting the authority of the federation of these Freemasons, this one family, this one bloodline family, where the root of this abomination started. Just imagine us being a family and having been got at by the master of this satanic deception, putting thoughts in our heads and conning us into thinking that there's a greater power than us, and we're listening to their voice, or its voice, and carrying out its inspirations to unfold Mystery Babylon, to unfold the secret societies, to unfold everything that's happened, that's become the system.
And it really will be the goodness of our hearts, because it is our the horror that we all feel at the devastation of the Amazon, the oceans, etc., that will lead us to go, okay, for the good of Earth, we go here, we do this, not realizing that that's actually accepting our slave status, but under a beautiful one world eco sort of thing. You know?
Yeah, so
I was always go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was always under that impression too that coming as one was the ultimate solution, but it's just a bit nonsense also because coming as one, we can't. Each country is very much like Italy is very far from me, Australia is very far. So coming as one, we cannot come as one in one physical place. So it's just again a mind game. It's all about the mind.
Well, one is finite. One is not eternal or free, or one is.
It's defined exactly. So let me get on with his comments. I said I was going to read the comments of Shalong before we forget, or we talk too much and we don't end up reading it. So it blows me away the gift Arthur has put out there and has never asked directly via Patreon or any other way like many others for a cent. People need to check themselves before they want to make stupid ego points about him. OMG, the content never stops, and I have come from a place where I can't imagine a grass man putting in this much time for free. Have a look around, and literally is endless up-to-date info. The intent is righteous, and there's only ego on others' projection and reflection of themselves, and not Arthur and or Fiona. Arthur walks the talk. And it blows my mind he's chosen this path to wake up anyone who is willing. This is the end of the rabbit hole. The best ever deconstruction of everything, and it feels right. There's no hidden end with Love for Life. No agenda apart from wanting to free us all, which means full responsibility. The truth hurts, which is why they attack the man. People should remember that he is not selling anything. Just getting to the bottom of this evil empire in which we all have been brainwashed into. I would hate to think what my life could be like if I did not find this info. Very happy I have found this. It's a gift. A beautiful mind to have that amount of damage done to a family and their life through corruption and fraud, yet still be better than his ex-captors who inflicted this damage and helping those get out. There is not a lot of time left before humanity is the direct path to destruction. The systems will soon come down around man. And if that's through the chip or AI, intelligence, artificial intelligence, then this may be the last gasp. Keep this in mind as well. However, those evil pricks in the NWO are engineering and using people with talents and music skills to sabotage Love for Life and Arthur's Insight, including all this new age, Santos, vegan consciousness, BS, one race, flat earth, which is not far from the truth and what they are wanting to happen. One religion, NWO, Mystery Babylon, Luciferian reality. I have no doubt and agree there will be plans in all forms staring people down with the goats. Anyway, I'm very grateful to see you, Arthur and Fiona, back here. It's very easy to get lost and distracted with all the bells and whistles the Matrix uses. However, knowing the degree of lie, meaning it's very easy to see who are the shills. That's everyone still supporting this satanic English slave system of illusion and magic. Everything starts with those magic spells, words, and meaning, and in which we create and put over the top of everything. That's very important to also see how we are our biggest enemy, with all these teachings, brainwashings we have been open to. Thanks again, Love for Life. P.S. I had no idea Jabba is such a celebrity. That's what we were talking just before. His new Flat Earth songs will put him back into the tornado of the frenzy. This must be a very confusing thing. His music has the timing and potential to be the next big thing in the music industry, emotional manipulation psyop complex. I'm very surprised this was the man connected to Love for Life, only hearing the Flat Earth song recently. It's pretty cool. How could one reconcile this? I mean, he is a walking product of the Matrix, but wants and pushes for the fall of Babylon. Would have been good if he could have come on the show along with others in the Love for Life Kingdom remedy. So then it's not all on Arthur and Fiona's shoulder, and we all learn this is the only way forward rather than discussing on Arthur and kidnapping his character for the intent to hurt the dream remedy. Either way, it's very confusing time for Jabba. My words, projections. I would be confused. He would be in demand by the Beast system for gigs all over the world, having a couple of hit songs. Would have been nice to hear he got control of the ego emotion and reconciled the difference with everyone, especially the hands that feed him, so to speak. Peace out. Bye. Hold on, I'm not done. You have to admit, it's again Shalong. We have to admit we are all very stupid. They have dumbed down people 100%. I'm struggling with keeping up too. But it's very simple things. But we have created a situation where everything is dramatized. Everything we think about seems to be attached to all of our ego. We don't realize we do it even when it comes to talking. Our people, we all don't like this because our ego is all it is in the entire thing. So when conflict arises, we skill or definitions tackle this. I'm glad Arthur is patient. I would struggle getting this message out. After spending hours with people, they still struggle to get it, which is Noon's fault. We have to confront these things, and well done to Tru-Mon, because to do this live on the WWW is not easy. It's everything we are. It's all fake from Kingdom Point. We don't even realize it and take all this personally. There is no way not to confront these things because this is the real truth. Conflict is not conflict. It's essential to make sure we protect the community, ourselves, from the influences of the occultists. Like Arthur said, they will come for you, and they do this behind the government. Occultists are the government. This is why the Holy Bible recommends we have governments. Go figure. What else? Or they also have exclusive reps. Go figure. OMG, religion is very dangerous and was designed as a bridge into our minds for sure. Right inside though. There's not much Arthur and Fiona have not thought about. Kingdom seems to be the only way we move forward. However, I can see it being hijacked by others and used as a political football. I would love to do this on an island. I know if you can't do it anywhere, then I will never be done. However, an island would be enable a little protection from the outside influences. That's the point I like he makes. Or maybe as a start, you go to the island kingdom to learn, to rethink, and or forget without pressures of the outside world. Once mastered, then we could move inland. Just an idea. Religion is a worry. Non-believers in Jesus and Allah are always killed over history. If we are to believe the stories we are from the Jesuit is story anyway. So that was the comment of Shalong. He commented all kinds of other stuff, but that's to tell you the kind of comments that come in. Big up Shalong. I read all of them. I even made video on my other channel with it. But I let you extend on his comments.
When we get past the epiphany of celebration, okay, it's part of the euphoria when people wake up there's a tendency usually where people glorify us, but we're not here for that. We came from this before we woke up in the system, glorifying the self-obsession that was dictating our lives. But we got to get past this celebration thing too, because it's the New World Order or no New World Order. The truth of at the heart, the essence, it's the living soul of the living man, and that cannot be defined by anyone, anywhere, at any time. There is no mystery to this. There is no ritual to it. There's nothing. Already an innocent child in the womb already has it. And it's always there with all of us, even all the while we are deeply lost in the euphoria of self-obsession. The thing not to forget, life is only about the creation of a living soul. And the living soul of the man is undefined. And the living soul has no definition. So for example, when we refer to us working together building the bridge, that is not the living soul. When we talk about creating kingdom, that is not the living soul. When we talk about one world, new world, whatever, it's still not the living soul. Even all the religions is not offering the living soul. The living soul is outside all of this. And what we're about is to take on that responsibility to create the environment for the living soul to unfold naturally, where no child can be defined by another man, and allow the uniqueness and the originality of each man to blossom the living soul. So under these circumstances that we live in the system, where those of us are waking up to what's happened and the methods applied that have kept our brothers and sisters and all our ancestors deceived and fallen, it's only the living soul of the living man that mattered. There have been, and I'm not going to sit around and be judge, jury, and execution and say, oh, that's a living soul, that's a living soul, there was a living soul. It's not about that. In spite of whatever's been thrown at us, and there has been no grand plan from some grand power that we needed to experience the satanic world and the darkness for us to have a living soul. That's all bullshit. And all the Freemasons who believe in this crap are being deceived. It's never ever been about any of this stuff, because who we really are is outside of all of this, right? So it's important that to get your head around the fact that it is only the living soul of the living man that matters. So you can be, if you imagine the imagery of Tiananmen Square with that one Chinese guy holding his flag against all those tanks, right? Now, a living soul could be in the middle of an armada of one world lackey slaves, and for thousands of kilometers all around is an army focusing on this one man, right? Now, if that man knows what that man is, it doesn't matter about one or millions of this lackeys out there, because it's not about how big the armies are or what kind of weapons they've got. It's got nothing to do with any of this stuff. It's about who you really are, because that does not die in spite of whatever has been thrown at you. And that's all that matters. So if you look at the Colosseum and the Christians been thrown to the lions, you look at the truth of what this man is sharing with you. When you wake up, they cannot kill you. You are not your body. You are not your body. You are not defined as the name that ends at the surface of the skin of what that body is, given the name. So when you truly wake up, you, under this circumstances, and this is what we've been experiencing. I've got to bring fantasy here. This is fantasy. Fantasy is a little black Barbie doll. And our name, the persona, is this. And we carry fantasy with us wherever we go, and we play for fantasy, and we wave a fantasy's arm, and we
Put her hat on.
We put a hat on, and we act. So I've had fantasy as my best friend since I got inculcated in the womb of my mother, and fantasy has been my
Your blanket
has been my blanket, for most of my life. Now, when you wake up and realize that fantasy is a lie, and that everything about everything of this life has been a lie, and when you get to the bottom of the trauma, the depth of this ritual sacrifice that has inculcated you through the bloodletting of English, alphabets, and mathematics and all that, and all the mysteries, you face this. You face fantasy. Because fantasy is what we carry as the persona in the system, because the man is not there. When you wake up, you put to rest fantasy. You let her go, and she's gone, right? You don't fight for her existence, because every emotion that you experience, everything you feel emotionally is from fantasy. It is not from who we are as a man. So it does not matter how many manipulators are out there trying to define reality for you, trying to put pressure on you, trying to coax people to say that this man, Arthur, is this and this and this and that. And that's what a lot of intel operatives do. They make all these claims unless we confront them. But the point of bringing up fantasy, each of you are possessed by her, by him. And it is fantasy that is social engineering. It is fantasy that is sexual stereotyping. It is fantasy that has defined you as gay or not. It is fantasy that's made you black or white, red, yellow, and brown. It is fantasy that's told you that you're Greek or Italian. It is fantasy that has told you that you're rich or poor, fat, thin, slim, slice, whatever. It is fantasy that's told you it's left or right, up or down. It is fantasy that told you that the Mars and stars and Venus and galaxies and universes. It is fantasy that told us that there were dinosaurs and all that. It is fantasy that told us it was flat Earth. It was fantasy and fantasy. And everyone running around lost in these inculcations have fantasy out front. The man is not there. You're talking to fantasy because the man died. The man ain't there. Who we really are, gone a long time ago. But if we try to wake up, we try to stick out, you know, we try to, you know.
But
I'm holding back not to laugh here.
It's a lie!
Yeah. That's what you realize. You realize the
really
fake
hard
stuff.
work comes. The really hard work comes because you have to do just that. You have to have the courage to stare fantasy in the face and realize the true effect that fantasy has on your life, and that is usually not very pretty at all, because it involves looking at all the nasty stuff inside that is hidden by fantasy. It involves all the jealousy, the rage, the hatred, the clinginess, the neediness, all the doubt, the uncertainty, the fear. This is what happens when you really take a look at fantasy. That's what you find, and this is usually the biggest sticking point for people. They hear, they start to stick their head out, but when it comes to this, it's a nightmare. But
yeah, but it's a big step.
You need to let it. You have to do it because you have to see where that stuff comes from, and in order to let it go. Because that little comment that was on Facebook, someone put about, you know, the best, if you want to get rid of your programming, basically to deprogram, you've got to comprehend what the programming is and learn to recognize it. Well, fantasy is the programming, which means that all those emotions, all that rage, anger, hatred, everything is also the programming. So you have to look at it and recognize it if you're to then be able to say, okay, I don't need that anymore. That's not who I am, and I'm putting it to rest. But this is, in fact, this is the biggest sticking point to us creating the paradise we all dream for, to creating the freedom, to creating everything. Because this is the point where most people stop and they run away and they put fantasy back.
Fantasy can't lead us to paradise. I mean, fantasy is Jesus. Fantasy is Allah. Fantasy is the Torah and the Talmud. Fantasy is anything that's been defined to you. And we are hooded by the priesthood, the brotherhood, because that's what fantasy is. When we say that's a daffodil and that's yellow, we're putting fantasy as a potato sack over that life form to shroud it in darkness. So now the life form is fantasy. Even though we might call it a daffodil and it's yellow, or we call it Mars or Venus, or we call it astrotheology, as that fucking liar Sanos Bonacci goes on about. There's many of them. Max Eigen, he says, Max tells everybody, he relies on the fantasy. Max lives for everyone to have their fantasy. We must go back to the garden. We must care for each other. But Max will not tell you the truth of the occults and how it all works, which we've done. So he hides this lie. He's scared of us. He's a gutless wimp. Anyone who knows Max Eigen will tell you he shits in his pants with us. He probably wears diapers. And he probably has truckloads of nappies stockpiled in his house because every day he's shitting himself because we live. We live not to live that fucking lie. He lives. Now, same with David Icke. David Icke runs around with this fantasy because they need you. You got to remember, we are all prepared in the grand plan to have fantasy, because fantasy is the man or woman under the land title deeds right now on the Commonwealth of Australia, under the Corporation of the United States of America, in Great Britain, everywhere. It is fantasy that has been manipulated through the occults of the Ordo Templi Orientis, through the occults of all forms of satanic rituals, abuse, and sacrifice, that has the Ordo Templi Orientis at its heart. It's not the only institution of this black, because it is the Ordo Templi Orientis at its roots, which you don't see on their surface of their websites, who are involved in the creation of fantasy. Every child must have fantasy. You cannot have fantasy and enter the New World Order. So this has been a gradual attack through generations to prepare our brothers and sisters to be uprooted from the land of their living dream, of that living soul, undefined. And through that gradualism, through the generations, with all the lying the occultists have made up, to get us to this time, this end times, where everyone will have fantasy to lead them to the glory of the New World Order, of a one earth. Because it will be fantasy living in the one earth, the one world government. It's only fantasy. And everyone who works as a judge is fantasy. Everyone who works in the political arena is fantasy. Everyone who works in every facet of religion, priests, archbishops, is fantasy. It is a lie, but they need you to believe in it so you could be led to the greatest prison cage of all, the invisible cage of the good-hearted, because it is there with the final seal of their testaments, of their acts, of their rainbow, if you want to call it, which you cross it, of the Ark of the Covenant, and of the glory of the King Arthur and the Round Table stories, right? And all these things, it is a lie. It is the occults.
It seems also that we're, as a whole, more and more dead because there's more and more of those preachers coming out now everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, there's more and more fantasy.
We just saw Charles Eisenstein. Someone presented to us Charles Eisenstein. He's fantasy. Maybe he has all the right words. His heart's good heart. He's a good-hearted man. He really is a good-hearted man. But he has not woken up to fantasy. Because he sees fantasy in everyone around him. And he sees fantasy in him. Because it's all you see. Because you don't have sense anymore. We're in nonsense. We're lost to fantasy. Because fantasy is nonsense. And You know, fantasy will tell you, hi, you know, hi, nonsense. Or as the Queen would do. Whatever she does.
But the Queen never loses her hat.
No, because she has all the right people to keep the image up for her.
Exactly.
But the point is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many of them there are, how often they've tried. If the penny drops and you can make sense with your senses, you have already won without having to be in a battle. It is not about their world. Their world is fantasy. Their gold, their dreams, everything they were told was a lie. They have nothing. And when everything collapses for them, because it's only what a lie can do, because there's nothing to hold it up except the liars, but that dies too. It all collapses. It's your living soul. See you as the man at Tiananmen Square. If you know who you are, you don't even need to be waving a flag. You could just be busy in the garden with all the tanks around you. You could be busy wandering the streets, eating out of garbage bins, and be totally awake and happy. It's that powerful, and yet it's so simple. There is no rules to how you get there. There is no ritual or conditions or contracts or information that leads you to this, right? Anyone can thread the camel through the eye of the needle if you use sense and make sense.
Yeah. And like I say often, they don't ask for a down payment. You can dream of hell at any time.
Yeah, so it's not about us and them. This is not a struggle. When you wake up, as we were working through the struggle of our own struggles, you know, there is no struggle. Because when you're not lost to fantasy, you'll see fantasy all around you for what it is, but it does not concern us, right? Because you cannot save anyone. You can't rescue anyone, as the man who wrote that letter is implying. Not in these words, but that's what he's implying. You can't rescue anybody. So love for life and the woman, the womb man, Fiona Cristian, and the man, Arthur Cristian, we're not your leaders. We're not your followers. We never have been. We're not a cult, because that's our fantasy. Only fantasy has a cult, you know. Love for life is not a cult. Love for life is the intentions of the living heart of man blossoming the unique original soul, right? And we need to create the environments of paradise for that to happen, for our children or grandchildren to reconnect and blossom this without anything contrived. So this is a true freeing up, because we've experienced some of our closest friends completely falling apart when they realized that fantasy is just a script. That fantasy has been a lie they've been living all their life, even up to now. That everything they've been feeling was emotion, contrived performances. Everything that they've been thinking was contrived actions for the robot lie that they live, because that's what fantasy is. Fantasy is a robot. Fantasy is a dead corpse. She can't walk, talk, think, feel, poo-wee, negotiate, contract, can't do anything. It's the same as Macquarie Beck, Supreme Court, same as ABC 123, same as all the definitions of all the occults. It is all dead. It has always been dead, because there's no soul there acting as fantasy. You can't visit fantasy. There's nowhere to go. There's no golden ages to visit. There's no end times anywhere to visit. It's fantasy. There's no first or last. There's no yesterday or tomorrow. It's fantasy in that way. And who we really are is not fantasy.
Many people will wake up from that fantasy also and live like in marriage, or they're in union with another partner, and suddenly the other one's not seeing what you see. That could be very, that's what he writes here. He says, as stupid as it sounds, I feel like we can all put up with partners who are not compatible with because the choices are limited. As a Euro person, I'm struggling to even find a fellow partner given the current migration policy in the city, let alone then finding a partner who wants kingdom. I feel there's a middleman, government, invisible end that's taken control of people, thus divide us all through indoctrination, addiction, spells, peace.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. I like that comment because a bit like my wife is seeing a bit of stuff, but she's not seeing the big picture. I don't think so. It's something that's very I don't know. Maybe she sees it too. I'm not in her head. That's again an assumption.
Very interesting that we can only, like with this man, I can only relate to where I've been in this life and where I've ended up, and what I've got to continue doing with this life is that I came from a very unhappy family with misery, with a lot of fighting and screaming going on. They're my earliest memories of violence, of my father choking my mother over the kitchen stove, to my mother leaving me with one of her friends who took me so many kilometers away from where I was living, growing up in Wallara, Edgeworth Road, Wallara, to somewhere in Maroubra, where I was being sexually abused over and over and over again. And I saw in the information of the trauma coming out of the bodies, when I was going through this work, I could see 5 people, a couple of women and 3 men, if I remember correctly. And I saw them anally having sex with me as a little boy. And I saw them doing things with my mouth. And I saw doing all, I mean, I could see things. I didn't want to see it all, but I could feel it. And my body was crying and purging. Now, the thing is that there has been an emptiness and a loneliness in the man, but this man never gave up. There's something in the fight. That's why the man ran off and was bringing dogs back home, you know, from age 2, 3, 4, would break away and get on buses. There's a part of us that we just fight. We fight because that's all we got, because there's no certainty around us. There's no one to provide stability where that sacred space can blossom as our lives. That's all been destroyed. It probably was already being destroyed for this man in the womb of my mother. Bless her heart. She's a good woman. She was a damn good woman, my mother. Very good-hearted woman. And just got herself in the wrong marriage with the wrong guy, and that was just sick stuff. But I bring these things up because the calling out of this little boy reared in fantasy, Arthur Cristian, or Arthur Nasios Buddha Das, was fantasy. This little boy. But somewhere, there was still a part of me there. I kept looking outside. I wasn't completely taken over. I wasn't gone. A part of me was still there. You could just see me. I could just feel me in my heart. And that's my heart, the real essence of the man. And this struggle against all opposition, because there's nowhere around to tell me anything of the truth. By the time I became a teenager, and I came, you know, and I'm talking about when I nearly killed my father. I literally almost murdered my father when I saw him trying to drown my mother in the toilet. And I saw another situation where someone hurt me really bad, and I tracked this man down. I nearly took him to the inch of his life with a piece of steel. I saw in me the rage of fantasy. And I saw that if I let fantasy take this man over completely, I could be a murderer. I could kill people, even though I had no fear of death anymore. The ritual sacrifice, whatever happened to me as a little boy, I no longer had any fear of death. But yet, some part of this man was dreaming for a beautiful relationship with a woman, for a beautiful, happy life. And even though I spent all the years growing up as a teenager and going through all the things I went through when I went through the Theosophical Society as a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old, and going through all the beginning of the New Cage stuff that I was seeing in the early 1970s, right through to Findhorn and Scotland, and discovering the New Age through that, and then going down into what we call Victoria and experiencing these alternative lifestyle communities where we met Bill Mollison, and he was coming in, and I was involved with another guy on this property called Sunrise Farm, and which part of it became Ontos. I mention these things because I saw communities coming together, all fighting and bickering. It was just, the horror of it was incredible. Even though everyone had a good heart, I just knew the fantasy was still having a lot of power, you know, and I didn't comprehend yet that fantasy existed. I just, somehow I was struggling. So no matter what I got myself into, I always kept looking over the fence like a horse. I kept looking around going, there's still something more. I don't feel right. I don't feel right with what I've read. I don't feel right about what I've been told. I don't feel right with what I'm doing with my life. I don't feel right with the money I'm making. I don't feel right about anything and anything I was doing. And there I was at 38, 39. I had this dream that I kept holding, some part of me, about a woman. And this woman appears in my life. And I did not even know.
You met Fiona late, at 38, 39.
I did not even know what she looked like. I had not married. I got close a few times to getting engaged in it, but I never got married. Had plenty of sex, did all that sort of stuff. But when I met Fiona, she lit up. It was an intense sunlight. And physically, I could not see her presence. I just saw a light. I was blinded by an intense light, meaning fantasy was put to one side for a moment. And I was seeing with senses something of the truth of the dream the man was dreaming for and holding. And then fantasy would kick back in, because when I got to see Fiona, I got to realize, oh, well, she's well packaged and all that. And she had her fantasy, and Fiona probably was like this too. And I fought for 6 months not to give in, because she wasn't interested. She wasn't interested in having a relationship with this man. But it took 6 months of fighting fantasy inside me, because every day I was crying. Every day I was crying. My heart was broken, but it had been broken since a little kid, because it was fantasy telling me I wasn't deserving. I can't have her. I can't have. Even I've had beautiful women in my life. Something about the essence of her soul and this man's soul, what was left of it, what was there, was fighting. And it took caveman tactics and things to us to get together. And then we spent 20 years living as Mr. and Mrs. Fantasy. Thinking, I mean, she will tell you that was Mrs. Fantasy, Mr. Fantasy. And along came a series of events, which we talked about in some of the other videos when you and me and Scott were doing it. And we started to see more and more and more with our senses. And we started to realize, my God, you know, just what has been done to us. So we spent we met in 96. It was 2005 when the penny dropped. So it was 9 years, 10 years when the penny dropped of sense and nonsense. When we met a man who told us, revealed to us his 30, 40 years of research, where he was a Freemason from South Africa, which only found out late last year or something. We didn't know that he was a Freemason, but he obviously had a lot of knowledge. He'd been collecting books from written by archbishops and bishops in the 1700s, 1800s. And in the back of the books were the meaning of the letters, the information of the letter itself, which is not taught to kids at school, not taught to anyone. And he also collected althosauruses and dictionaries. Now he shared to us the insights of the words, and that's what triggered off this "we will lead every revolution against us," which became very profoundly in this man. And that's why I contacted David Icke, because David stayed in our home back in 1997 or something like that. 96, 97, I think it was, when he was doing a tour out here. And I looked after him for about a week. We both spent time with David. And we realized,
whoops. I think Arthur is frozen. Whoops. Frozen! Yeah, he should come back. During that time, it's okay. I have a lot of stuff for you people. Yeah, I'm here. Live and direct. Boom! So listen, Shalong. Shalong has another comment, and I'm going to read it by the time Arthur redo his connection, because he seems to be frozen. So, Earth people. I was David Icke. Patrick, you're David Icke. Yeah, I've been listening. I've been on David Icke myself for a while too, before I got onto other people, Santos and all that, lead me to Chaba, Arthur, and all that. But I think what I said before, it's very on point. I think when you hit the Tru-Mon show and the stuff with Arthur, it's pretty much the end of the rabbit hole. And I tell you all the time, guys, it's not about the conspiracy. It's about us creating a living soul, a living dream. Living our dreams. I've been saying that from a long time. So it's not about the madness. We should not focus on the madness, but focus on the greatness. That's another thing. So very much important to create a living soul, create something that you're going to be inspired by. And when you become inspired, you can inspire others. That's the beauty of it. That's what happened to me. That's why you see me online all the time. I am very inspired, for sure. I can feel it. I was saying it in a video today. I feel like I am led into this. It's not even forced. It's very natural because I'm remembering who I am day by day. I don't know yet everything about me. It's very... it's undefinable, like Arthur says, so it's very hard to say, okay, I know exactly who I am and what I come to do here. I know I have an inner purpose and an outer purpose. Inner purpose is to wake up. That's all. That we all have the same inner purpose. It's to wake up. The outer purpose could vary over time. For now, it is what it is, what I'm doing here on YouTube, and that's also a great painkiller for me. I use it as painkiller, as motivation, that's what we have to do, stay motivated. What do we have? Life. We must meet life with full presence and power, and the world we live in, it's very negative. So what we need is motivation. Each and every day, we need to stay motivated for life. First of all, it's good to talk about conspiracies and nonsense and stuff, but at the end of the day, we have to stay motivated each and every day for life. And that's a big, huge challenge for some people because of the negativity around. So let go of the nonsense Babylonian vibration. That's a good start. That's a good start to let go of nonsense, especially yeah, big up Patrick. It was David Icke, meaning them losing connection was him because yeah, okay, yeah, okay, I know what you mean, but yeah, okay, yeah, it was probably David Icke hacking the connection of Arthur. But it's gonna be also the last with Arthur for a little bit. I don't know if he's gonna be able to reconnect, but anyway, he's there now. Okay, you're there.
We're back.
The computer just shut down completely. Just shut down.
Yeah, it's okay. I was.
So that's never happened before, and it was interesting how it just shut down. So probably Intel, I'd say.
No, someone says it's David Icke. Patrick said it's David Icke.
It's the NBN, the National Broadband Network. It's all the new digital technology. This is why they got rid of asbestos out of all the houses, because they lied about all the other stuff, because the real purpose behind asbestos, to get it removed out of all the houses, blaming the company Hardy's, was the fact that it was blocking out all the surveillance intelligence technologies, microwave radio couldn't get through the asbestos. They couldn't look into your home. So, because asbestos was used in ceilings and walls. And the same with lead and lead paint and stuff like that. Yeah, there has, look, all these things have harm, but the big scam. So it's the same thing with the digital. They are neurotic. You're dealing with the most paranoid, the most absolute paranoid, jealous lovers you could ever possibly comprehend as occultists and the intel networks who work for them, right? When going back to finish what I was sharing, I don't know where we left, but I was talking about how this man had not given up that love, that purity, because the man was dreaming for it. Even though fantasy had pretty much been dominating this man's life as an ego trip and been living in the inculcation of all that emotion, and being traumatized, there's still that not giving up. So what I'm trying to point out to you is that there's no luck in our relationship. We've had people be jealous of our relationship, even up to recent times. The jealousy is possessing them so much because that part of them, that broken will, that given up, they think they don't deserve it. They don't think they can have it. You know, So I went through that when I met her, when she lit up. And then I said 6 months. That battle between fantasy and Arthur, you know, fantasy and Arthur. It's like, you know, who's going to win? And then the first 9 years together was a battle too. Will we survive this marriage together, this relationship? And then even through the years since, there was things that came up that challenged us, where fantasy was trying to get in between our hearts, right, of the living soul. We're not talking about coveting that I own Fiona and she owns me. It's the true essence of the living dream. So don't give up. If there's anything left of you and you can just see past fantasy, use your senses and stick with what you sense and stick it out so fantasy will fade away. Don't feed your energy. And the critical thing about fantasy is what we mentioned in, I think, last week's show or the week before. When you sense a life form, when you sense reality, who you are is there with what you're sensing. The fragrance of the plant is where you are. Your sense is there. Your sense is not here. In the name of Arthur, thinking yellow daffodil. Because if I thought that the life form was here, because I was defined for me, so what I'm looking at is defined for me, I'm trapped in fantasy because fantasy is self-obsession. So who we are is never here. We're not here in the body. Our body is just a part of the wholeness. A true consciousness.
I always felt that. I always felt like inspiration when I said that's what I was talking before. I'm very inspired, but I feel like there's something not in the body. Like it's hard to describe that feeling, but sometimes it's like it's almost an constant outer body experience with the. I don't know. It's very. You have to live it. You have to live it to feel it.
It's interesting because in Factory Planet Earth, the system of the occultists, you know, you have on the production line, out comes Wendy from the woman's womb, and she's just coming out. Here she comes. Here comes fantasy. Oh, and she's on the production line. You know, the machine. Oh, birth certificate. Oh, this is fantasy. To the next stage. Oh, production line. Go to school. And your whole life is just this fucking machine, robot, drone, and that's all you know, because everything was defined. But when you wake up, when this man had that 2 weeks sleep, which I touched on in that one of your earlier shows a few weeks ago, when the man came back, this man did not know where the man was, had no idea. But I was looking through the eyes of an innocent child, like an innocent, like I felt like I didn't even know what trauma was. I had no experience of self-obsession. The calmness and the peace was just bewildering in that way. But what I'm getting at is that essence of that man in front of all those tanks of our soul is still here now. No matter of how much has been said about anything across social media, or what are they trying to do in rallying Donald Trump and all the new things with politics, ignore it all. Walk away. Walk away. Because fantasy will keep you there. Because it's only fantasy that keeps you in social media. It's only fantasy that keeps you on the internet. It's only fantasy that keeps you self-obsessed with money and land and ownership. But who you are is none of this.
And it's fantasy that keeps you powerless. Because, I mean, I could sit here right now for half an hour or so and tell you all the things that are not right with my life, all the ways it could be better, and all the things I want and all the situations that I would like to change about my life. But if I sit and focus on that constantly, then all I do is end up in the rut of emotional fantasy. And the invitations are there constantly. Every day I have invitations in my head, in my thoughts, that invite me to go down those paths of feeling discontented, feeling dissatisfied, feeling unhappy, feeling unloved, feeling a failure, feeling that I haven't created what I wanted to create. Now, I can choose to focus on those, and then very soon I'll end up down in the pit of a wishy-washy emotion, swishing around with my unhappiness, my misery, my sadness, my sense of not having achieved anything. That invitation is there constantly. And this is what people do not realize. They think that they're going to wake up and hey, I've seen it, I get it, now I walk on. But they don't realize that it's constant, this invitation from the dark side to slip into the dark side and keep there, to keep in the fantasy of all that emotions. That is what happens to most people all the time. Hey, fantasy's got to take the back seat. You see,
that's the conversation in the head.
This is it. And now this is my choice. Do I let that fantasy behind me rule me, or do I go, okay, I can hear all those invitations and I may have to spend all day just keep pushing them aside, pushing them aside, pushing them aside, and focus on what I know that I can do, and focus on being that sunshine in the lives of those around me, focus on what I can do in the garden, even if I have to go to work, even if I don't have enough money to buy this, that, or the other. That is the choice. But that is the hard work, because those invitations are constant. While we're surrounded by the system, we are always going to be bombarded by those invitations to fall into the fantasy, which is inevitably leads us to falling into misery and unhappiness. So this is the strength. This is the strength of the not broken will. Do you let all those circumstances and situations and your relationship and everything else suck you down into still wallowing around in the fantasy? And do you go, or do you say, well, all these situations are happening around me, but I still choose not to be broken by that. I still choose just to do what I can as I can to be that ray of sunshine.
Exactly.
But Fiona, please don't forget me.
Fantasy.
Fiona, don't forget me. Don't let me fade away and die.
Go fantasy.
Don't let me fade away and
but
die.
Again, this is the other thing. We don't do this with fantasy. We don't wrestle and batter, and we just say, oh, look, it's you again. Sorry, I'm thinking about something else. Oh, it's you again. No, sorry, go away. Oh, you again. Go away. That's what we do with it. We don't wrestle with it. And that is the other trap that people fall into. They get into, they realize their self-obsession and they start wrestling with it. And they're wrestling and they're wrestling. And all it is, God, I'm being attacked here. All it is more fantasy and more self-obsession, getting self-obsessed about the self-obsession. It's just a matter of, okay, there's my self-obsession. Go away. There's my self-obsession. Go away. There's my self-obsession. Go away. And it's just a constant. And probably those of us who are in this state of waking up where we are in this system, we may have those voices the rest of our lives while we're still in these bodies. What our job is to keep ignoring them, and to hopefully and to provide the space for the children or the grandchildren to come to not have that constant fantasy in their heads.
So the healing, the real healing work, and this is where Hannah has been very powerful for us in I think we've broken Fantasy's neck.
No, we haven't.
Oh, okay. Poor
Fantasy.
But anyway, look, going back to the production line of Factory Planet Earth, you know, Fantasy has been reared in the womb, right? Because she's a ward of the state. And when you have used your name as a signature, you're born in the original sin. So Fantasy arrives as the man, Fiona Cristian, in original sin. Because Fiona believes in the definition of Fiona and Fiona Cristian, and that she's English, and the name of her parents, and all the ancestry that comes with it that was defined in the system. So already Fiona is certified, and she's been given a Sestaq Trust bond account with her signature, with a mother's signature or father's signature, or whether even a priest calls out the name to see if anyone will respond to say whether is it living Fiona, because Franco Collins pointed that out years ago, that they, when they hit around the age of 7, they will have a priest walk down the corridors of whatever this hospital is, or call out the name Fiona Cristian, Fiona Cristian, anyone there, anyone there? And if no one answers, they put it down as the Sestaq Trust bond, and so the Fiona Cristian comes certified, bonded, and she's now this kid at, because you know you're already at kindergarten and you're already heading into first class and second class when this is happening. So all the definitions that have been put in now Fiona is fantasy. But Fiona walks around with a driver's license. It's fantasy. The driver's license is fantasy. The everything Fiona thinks is fantasy. And all the emotion that she experienced that she's been talking about is fantasy. So coming through the conveyor belt, through the production line of Factory Planet Earth, and you're going from one, you know, as in rock and roll rhythm beats and that, because that's all part of the production line of the cults, creating cults,
Okay, you should put a reggae beat on this.
Yeah, well, we could look at.
It sounds
Well,
a bit-
hello
a bit
there.
boring.
So anyway, the point I'm getting is that I use that a lot. The point we're getting at, the bloodletting and blood libel of the sacrifice through rituals, referring to darkness, visual part 5, is constructing the demon, the entity, the thought form, fantasy, and given fantasy a social engineered fashion statement. So she has to be defined as Arab, Muslim, or Christian, Italian, Roman, or Greek Orthodox, right? And all what we talked about in other shows, the compelling emotions of the language that we talk is what performs the life of fantasy, because fantasy is born out of English or alphabets. Fantasy cannot even exist without the definitions of ABC 1, 2, 3. Be it Hebrew, which was the original fake tongue, and hieroglyphics that came together, that formed the system of Egypt, or whether it evolved to Latin, Italian, Spanish,
But
French.
the sounds also in the words are very important for them. Like I can mean very different.
Yeah, of course it is. There's many, but the point is that the definition is what we bond to. This is what Fiona's talking about. And so the emotion of the language performs. Fiona will take fantasy and she will move fantasy's arms and she'll walk around and say, hi, I'm fantasy. And I married fantasy. Well, I didn't know I was marrying not just Fiona, I was marrying fantasy. And vice versa, she was marrying Arthur's fantasy. And we were having a relationship in the system, with Mr. and Mrs. Fantasy. And the thing is that every single alphabet thought in our head is fantasy, is the personality of fantasy, is the life, the fake life of fantasy. And all the emotion she is experiencing is fantasy. It is a direct copy. Because see, fantasy is satanic engineered demonic possession. The purpose of fantasy is to completely possess the living woman, so that the living woman has no living soul. But Fiona's fought hard to break fantasy, to make sure that the heart and the radiance of the living woman, her senses, what she senses, is there. And fantasy is gradually, well, sometimes she keeps coming back, and
sometimes she comes back.
Sometimes she comes back, Sometimes Arthur's fantasy comes back, But we have fought really hard, not in violence, but to let her go. And the remedy is in your senses. When you sense definition, you're sensing the lie of fantasy and the emotion that comes with it. So when you're thinking land title deeds and mortgage, it is fantasy's mortgage. It is fantasy's land title deeds. And if you're sensing contracts with bank accounts and check, and credit cards and tax file numbers, it is fantasy. It's not yours, because they don't exist. They're nowhere to be found. And the whole system of the law, when you go into their courts to be caught, C-A-U-G-H-T, it is fantasy, ruled by those who control factory planet Earth. You come in fantasy to operate and abide by the laws governing the world of fantasy. And if you don't wake up, you'll be trapped in the new world order of fantasy, forever gone. Because if you don't wake up and all you know is this, when the body of yours is rest, and that's all you got, because that's all you're thinking, there is no soul there.
You'll be trapped in the fantasy of save the earth, live green, grow food.
There's no soul anymore.
Natural remedies. That's all fantasy.
So what you got to remember, Mars, when you're looking up at Mars, we're looking up at fantasy. When we're looking at flat Earth, we're looking at fantasy. Because who we are is not there. Flat Earth is here. Fantasy. Flat Earth is here. Christianity is here. Jesus is here. God is here. That's self-obsession. It's fucking lying. We're lying. So when we've been working with those here, and we've been learning through this guinea pig stuff that we've been doing to each other and using others as guinea pigs too, is to work all this out. The thing is that the fantasy is the paranoia, is the obsession, is the anger, the rage, the greed, the selfish. You name every single destructive emotion is fantasy. So we say to others, look, who you are, who you really are, is what you sense. So if you're holding a seed in your hand, that's where you are. When you're working with the soil and you're sensing the soil, that's where you are. So if you're focusing on what you're sensing, and you're working with the seed and working with the soil, and you're nurturing the seed, and in nurturing this life form that blossoms as the plant, that's where you are. Because fantasy ain't there. But when you become self-obsessed and you get lost in the definitions of the seed, and lost in the definitions of the soil, and lost in the definitions of the plant, and lost in the definitions of permaculture and soil science, and lost in the definition of everything, you're still in a state of fantasy. You're under the state of New South Wales. You're under the state of California, because it is a prison state. You are in a state, a psycho state. You're lost in a psychological state because fantasy is still in power. Fantasy goes to vote. Fantasy still uses the credit cards and the check accounts and runs the names. So you're still in their dream world. You're still in Caesar's world, because that's where fantasy is. So the more you use your sense and realize when you're looking at the celestial bodies and you're sensing it, that's where you are. When you're looking at the forest and sensing that, that's where you are. And when you do that, fantasy falls away. She dies. So the more that you go into your senses, and the more you sense, the less the chit-chat in the back of your head of, oh, that's the moon, that's Mars, oh, that's permaculture, this is swaling, this is soil science, all the definitions.
And
That's why I think it's Bruce Lee that said the finger, while you point the finger at the moon, you're missing the moon or something. Bruce Lee said that.
well,
Yeah, you're lost in the definitions. Exactly. You're lost. Look, who we really are cannot be defined. We cannot define who you really are. We can't even define, I cannot define who this woman is. She can't define who this man is. But when we sense she's in this relationship of the dream that she held, that's when she was a young girl growing up, because she was holding, she wanted to have that kind of dream, you know, that kind of relationship as this man did. So the opportunity came where we met, because we've been holding that dream. We've been creating it. But we had fantasy, and we had this battling relationship, which we introduced to our dream. So our dream was corrupted. Our dream wasn't pure and sincere. And so we had to battle to remove fantasy out of our dream so we can get our dream back to some kind of purity and sincerity. So we had to work through all kinds of stuff, including sex, all kinds of stuff, because it was fantasy telling us we should have sex. It was fantasy telling us we should be doing this and this and that and this and this and that, about all kinds of things.
What about marriage?
It's the same thing. It was fantasy.
What about marriage? Because we're all married. We're all that's
already together.
Another thing. I think there's a bit of illusion in there.
Marriage is a contract with the government.
With fantasy.
You
the
know,
government of fantasy.
We're having this huge thing at the moment with gay marriage over here and all that sort of stuff, and whether it's going to be legal. And it's like, well, it's fine. But I keep thinking, you idiots. Why do you want another contract with the government? Because that's all it is. It's the government. There's no, you know, the true marriage, as it were. It's just a man and a woman who want to co-create together and build a dream together. That's got nothing to do with a piece of paper and a contract. So
you already are married.
Yeah.
You see, who you are already exists. Why do you need a name to define you when you already are? People can smell you. People can touch you. People can hear you. You are already being who you are. Why do you want that to be defined? People say you want freedom, but you already have freedom. You already got it. Why do you want the freedom? You see, freedom, the definition of freedom is fantasy. When someone defines freedom for you, that's not your freedom. It's an idea about freedom, but that conversation in your head is fantasy because it's not your dream. You did not sense it. You did not create it. It's not your consciousness. When someone like Charles Eisenstein talks about consciousness, it's not your consciousness. It's not your paradise. It's an idea, a definition.
And marriage is not your relationship.
Exactly. And it's not who you are.
Yeah. So it's just, you know.
See, marriage is all those tanks surrounding the man again.
So the only thing that can really save us is strengthening our mind. That's all we have left, strengthening our mind.
You've got to wean out the definitions and stop living for them, because that's where fantasy is. So every alphabet thought in your head is fantasy. But your senses, what you sense doesn't require alphabet thoughts for you to experience whatever you are sensing. What you sense of the tree is already present to you. There's no alphabet thought required for you to sense the tree. It's only that fantasy comes in and says, that's red gum. And it's this and that you let the fantasy, where you give up your soul, give up creating your soul, because that's where your senses are. You give up sensing. And when you give up sensing, you are letting fantasy take over. And when you multiply the production line of Factory Planet Earth, all those definitions that were smashed into us over and over and over. Come on, children, spell after me. ABC, ABC, 1, 2, 3. Repeat after me. Let's spell, let's spell, let's spell. These definitions is the basis of inculcation. This is at the root of all the occults. This is how you walk into their courts, because the definition makes you believe that you are the person walking in their court. You are in their world. This is why this man dropped everything. We agreed. She'd stay with all the contracts. She still has the contracts.
I'm still fantasy.
She's still fantasy, but she's not driven by fantasy. She just plays the game of fantasy, because there's no point being Robin Hood. We're going to go and start robbing everyone so we can feed and look after our children. We're not going to go out in the middle of the wilderness and run away from all of this, because we realize fantasy's everywhere, and it'll come as armies everywhere, and fantasy doesn't see reality.
And so, we're responsible for
and all the intel operatives and occultists and all the military and all that, they won't see the living. They'll just see this. And so they'll kill us or lock us up or poison it, and then rewrite the story about us and try and change the history again, which is what they do when they rewrite the stories of all the great people.
This is what happened also too, is the people fantasy. Well, like you say, when the police arrest us, all they see is the fantasy. They don't see the living.
Well, they know.
They see the fantasy.
Because the conversation in their head is the definitions that define the lie of their life as fantasy. The police officer, John Smith. Right, and everything in their head that's performing the man John Smith, from when he gets up in the morning to the clock, when the clock goes off, through every ritual. You know, maybe we talked about this in one of the early videos, where you're waking up in a bedroom with synthetic sheets, and you've got, with artificial pillows and artificial things, and you're in a bed in a room with painted artificial things, and you've got artificial, all kinds of synthetic stuff that forms the house of your bedroom. And you walk into the bathroom, and inside there, and wherever you're going. And when you're having your shower with the synthetic stuff and artificial stuff, or even things that have been defined as natural and organic, and with chlorine coming out of the water, and then you come out and you dress yourself up and you're wearing the suit of fantasy, you've got a tie and collar and uniform and jacket, and then you walk down the corridor and you stick your head in, you see your kids are playing with iPods in the morning in their bedroom. They're all in fantasy, because they're the children of fantasy. You're in the house of fantasy. And then you walk in the kitchen, you see Mrs. Fantasy making bacon and eggs and squeezing fresh orange juice, and all has the right words. And she said, don't forget tonight, we've got to go and listen to the Dalai Lama of fantasy, and we're going to go and see Deepak Chopra next week and get an upkeep of consciousness and insight, We need a prep up. So Factory Planet Earth, boom, 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 still continues on.
We said the reggae beat.
And he gets in the car, he gets in the car and he drives off, and amongst everyone in the car, everyone's driving. Fantasy's everywhere. Beep, get out of my way. Beep. Got to get to work. Got to be there by 9 o'clock. And he
hey guys,
the car, listen, it's seriously.
Yeah.
If we don't wake up, the only way you wake up to be that guy who stood up against all those tanks, right, is to be the man with sense. You have to drop and get outside fantasy. Okay. That's why this man dropped the contracts, dropped everything.
I have something else, Arthur, to tell you also before we finish this, because we have like half an hour left, and I have another comment from Shalong that I want you also to extend on it, and you're gonna like it. So because it's very valuable. I value comments that come in. It's very good insight. You have insight. I have insight. People have insight, and especially in the chat now, it's going good. People are commenting a lot of interesting stuff. I try to pick it up as it passes, but sometimes it's hard. My focus is here, where I am. I sense this. So I'm starting. That's Shalong Gegenspuff. I don't know if he's there tonight, Shalong. I'm reading all his stuff. I haven't seen him yet. I'm starting to feel very upset and betrayed at the levels of my inculcation. The fictional character have been supported, this is what we're talking, and encouraged to be, while the sweat equity and reliability is my byproduct demanded of the system. I'm only starting to see the deep, insidious lie I am and have been playing. Who the fuck am I? Can I ever get past the letters and symbols matrix? OMG, this is deep. I have times where I can't comprehend what it is you claim. Then other time I get a small glimpse into how deep this thing goes. How do you learn to forget the brainwashing and reform what's left? Will it be ever possible? I feel like I've been raped. Seriously. What would a life be? My dream? Would it be magic or the mundane? Would community give freedom to dream, or would it hinder our dream? I'm literally digital. How does... Hold on.
That's digit.
Eh?
That's digit.
Yeah, that's digit. Yeah, I'm digital.
The name is number one.
Yeah. How does one begin to peel back this amount of MK Ultra lies? It turns flat earth into the pimple it is. Pales in comparison. A part of me wishes I stayed away from these rabbit holes. This is as deep as it goes. Thank you for the help. I am going to start this process. I already have. Know what I want to do. Break my shackles and tell my master to go fuck himself. Example, my job is soul destroying, but I am the only one to blame. Every man has free will, but he does not hold this truth. I don't think people grasp the gift Arthur has tried to give us. Look how many times I use the letter I. It's so selfish. Anyways, I'm not sure if thanks is right, but thanks, Arthur. And I feel the same thing as him. I've been on and off your stuff for a year, but I finally got a small taste after this vid. Talking about episode 72. Cheers! You are such an inspiration. I want to slap those who harm you and slander. P.S. What happened to the Satanists that harm children, people through rituals? I'm wanting to know. Would not they have processed the curse, or are they blinded by those higher up? Those higher up don't do the rituals firsthand, but endorse those who to do it? I'm wondering they should be cursed. Why are they not cursed from their deeds? Or are they? And if a community is to know truth and say to those who mean harm in the system the declaration about them processing the curse for harming a love for life community, why would they care about curses if they are killing people in rituals? I'm struggling with this aspect. It makes no sense to me. Peace and thanks for all the help. Big comment.
Yeah, it's good. It's confusion. The occultists are confused. They are monotheistic believers of the rituals that define their life as fantasy, as in David Bottrell, the Ordo Templi Orientis. This is David. Some people say he's an ASI agent. I don't know. He's a man. David is my brother. David can live his fantasy and he can attack all the people out there that he likes. And the Ordo Templi Orientis, they can. It doesn't matter whether you do or you don't in that way. All you're doing is committing spiritual suicide because you're living the lie of the curse of fantasy, carrying out the emotions of all those instructions. And when you do that, the reality is not on your radar. And all the time that reality is not on your radar means that Wendy the witch or fantasy, is in control. And that's the conversation in your head. And the more you are in the conversation with fantasy, the more you are practicing the satanic rituals of spiritual suicide, because that's what the curse is. See, the lie, the born into original sin, the lie, born into the original lie, is to commit spiritual suicide, meaning to not create and expand a living soul, meaning you must not rely on your sense to make sense, to work with your senses and build dreams out of that, what you sense. You can only build dreams out of the definition. So fantasy has come with a library of information through everyone who has been exposed to that library of information, who live that library of information in the suburbs, in the cities, in the apartment blocks, as the courses and careers of everyone in the system, because everyone is out front living fantasy, because the living man is not there. You can't sense the man, right? This has been done to all the occultists. This is why we say David Bottrell's not our enemy. It never has been. We don't mind provoking like a red rag to the bull to bring them out and flaunt their occultic practices, just to show who are these people, who are they, and what are they trying to protect. We don't mind all this. You see, because when you wake up, you already are eternal life. You already are that life, because that's what life is. It's eternal. But when you fall into the definition of the original sin, you have died, and now you're in the struggle of fantasy, and whether anything remains of your good heart that you can sense to help you to overcome the control of fantasy. Because if you don't, you will go to government. You'll go to the government's law. You will go to the government of religion. You'll go to all kinds of occultic practices to continue performing the social engineering of the lie of that original sin. And that is the curse. Because if you are distracted and all you know is fantasy, you're gone. You're gone. Right? And that's what we're trying to, what we're inspired to do is to help others make sense of nonsense and sense. Because if you can't see the difference, you won't know where fantasy ends and who you are begins. Not that it ever began. Because fantasy had a beginning and fantasy has an end because it's finite. It doesn't exist. It's just temporary. Right? Because we say so. But you've got to know who you are. And when you come from your senses, from the living soul, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they do. No matter how many weapons they've got, no matter how many rituals they perform, it's on them. Because remember, in the end, each of us has free will. And it's their choice. And all the backing up of the cults, because all the Freemasons need each other to provide the legion of the religion of law and the religion of government and the religion of the intelligence networks for them to act as thugs and intimidators, to force their will on the innocent so they can dictate their policies over the innocent and to control them and manipulate them in the way they want them to be, right? When you wake up, this has no effect on you because it's gone to sleep. It's gone to its grave. It's dead. Who you are is not affected by any of this stuff, no matter what they do. So it's no longer a struggle and a battle about freedom. When you wake up, all those of you who are still trapped in the sovereignty movements and the free man movements and all this, you do not write to anyone because it's only fantasy that writes to someone in fantasy. You don't ask fantasy to fix matters of fantasy, which is what the issue of freedom is when you believe there's an issue of freedom. You don't ask someone else to fix the issues of your cage, your prison. You fix it, which means you've got to let go of fantasy. But then comes the big issue, the doubt and the uncertainty, which is fantasy too. Do I have the courage to overcome the fear of uncertainty, the fear of not having any money, the fear of being ostracized by the religions of the occults that forms the rock and roll industries and Rastafarian and forms punk rock and forms, paganism under the guise of Christianity and Allah and Mohammedism and all this stuff? It's just coming at you left, right, and center as the New Age too. You see, when you wake up, you are the living man. And you're not answerable to anyone or anything at any time. Because you are already what you are. And if you know who you are, you'd never harm another man because you don't covet another man for you to have what you want. Because in the free man sovereignty movement, you still need the religion of slaves for you to have your freedom. You need the religion of slaves for you to have your ceste que trust be processed so you get your $1 million or $1 billion. But you don't realize that if everyone got the ceste que trust access to that account, so meaning everyone with fantasy can go and access that bank account overnight, everything would be worthless and no one would want to work. You see, people don't realize the compelling emotions behind the free man sovereignty movements and just all this stuff is fantasy. Keeping you trapped in the matrix of fantasy, thinking that there's a golden egg down there, there's some magic silver bullet. There's nothing. There never has been a mystery to your freedom. There's never been a mystery to your consciousness. That was a lie, a deception by the occultists to keep you trapped in their religion. Now, the New World Order will be the next religion, a one world of the invisible cage of the good-hearted.
Shalong says you put it in perspective. Just another little comment in the big comment. He says we are going from NASA globalize and a 20-year daily mind control program at school to a new age model of worshiping the occult storytellers. That's all it is.
Yeah,
that's all they are.
Is that it's you've got to get past the religion, as in this man does not need this man for this man to be what this man is. I don't need to covet this woman to have the life this man has. We work through this shit. But when we wake up, the true freedom of this man and the true freedom of this man, this woman, already is present. Its presence, its essence is already being what it is. She's already being and living and doing all the things that she is. It's undefined. And this man is already being and living and doing all the things this man already is. We don't need definitions to bring us together in a state of fantasy and call it a marriage certificate and live in the suburbs under rental contracts and live with a lie that we've talked about in a lot of the other earlier videos. This is all part of the scam. When you wake up, you do not write to anyone about anything. You don't fight with anyone about anything. You withdraw peacefully. You withdraw because you already are the living consciousness of the living soul. Why would you give it up by trying to rely on a religion to force an army of your lie to put that on pressure on another man? Because you're no different to the occultists when you do this. You're forcing your will of your idea of freedom onto somebody else. And this is how the original tribes destroyed each other. Because they started imposing their idea of whatever onto another man. Instead of accepting every man peacefully as that man of peace, as that man of truth. So when you really wake up, you're not in the emotion. You're not coming out of the production line, walking around as a man of freedom. I'm a man of truth. I'm a permaculture man. Hey, I'm a man. I'm a cowboy. I am the aristocrat of the Republicans. I'm going to free my American people. I'm going to use guns because fantasy has a gun to stand up for my rights. When you wake up, you don't need to stand up for anything because you're already standing up. You're already fucking a man. Don't buy the lie. The definition deceives you. And the occultists rely on this to continue sucking you in. So the remedy, kingdom is not a religion of all brothers and sisters coming together under the guise of do no harm, because that's another cult. And that's why we unplugged from Jabba when he was running these scripts chronically, because he could not sense at that point, bless his heart, he's a beautiful man. And what we've done for him is a gift because we love him unconditionally. That's why we did it. So he would unhinge from the script and stop living the lie and be more the man that he really is, and not the Arthur Christian impersonator running the script where he can't sense the living before him who are innocent, have no malevolent intent. You've got to know the difference between those who have malevolent intent, who are out to fuck you over, manipulate you, and that's why we expose all the psyop tactics of Max Igan and David Icke and Michael Tellinger, and it goes on. You've seen all Mark Pazio liars. We show you the psyops of this, the cunningness of this thing. But we don't want you to follow us. And Mark Pazzi and all these guys, they're innocent, true, in the end, because they've been brainwashed, even though they carry the malevolent intent, because they've been inculcated for so long. And they are the soldiers of darkness because they believe the lie. And they believe in it, in the bigger picture of the lie they were given, and their place in the lie in the afterlife that they've been lied to.
There is a lot of manipulators out there, and there's a very few motivators, a lot of manipulators, and there's a big, huge difference between motivation and manipulation. The manipulation, you get someone to do something because you want them to do it for your personal advantage. But when you motivate something, it's for motivate someone is for a mutual advantage. So it's very different.
Exactly, that's the system.
Yeah.
When you wake up, the reason why this man does what this man's doing in the garden is because this man is creating abundance for this man's children, so that I'm responsible to provide health to my children, to provide truth to my children, but let them experience it, because they're still going to school. They're still going with their fantasy. But my children are able to see.
Yeah, that's it.
But they all can. They can. And so we know that they will conquer the veil of fantasy, because their conscience will tell them that. They won't sell out. The fire in them is stronger. But we did not want our children to be ostracized by having us and them. We don't want them to go to school, you're one of them. We wanted them to embrace everybody, build their life with everyone, because they're not their enemy. And they can work it out in their unique way how they set the example to dismantle the system of slavery, because right now, we're all woken up, compromised to the system of slavery, where we need everyone in the religion of the system to deliver us the water, deliver us the electricity, to deliver us the petrol, to deliver us the motor cars, deliver us the supermarkets, the shopping centers, to deliver us fucking all the bullshit entertainment and sport and fashion. It goes on and on, because it's all fantasy. It is not our living soul. We never dreamt any of it.
Just imagine the gas station closed, how many people, their life collapse and they're under stress because they rely on this. They rely on the grocery store because they can grow food. They don't want to do it. So they rely on the system totally. So
true, because that's all they know. All they know is their freedom in the world of fantasy. That's why they look at lawns and they look at outside and lawns and that. They only know because that's what fantasy is. That's all they know. But when you stand up and you start to turn this thing around, you are that guy in front of all those tanks. When you really wake up, you're going, I've got to take responsibility. So you start working harder. You got to work the land wherever you may be, or go and start growing food. Start feeding those you're responsible for. In this case, I'm responsible for these children. I'm responsible to make sure Fiona. So I bring more money in. I used to bring $4,000 a week income as an average income for 19 years, nearly 20 years, as an average, right? And had everything. Today's value would be $2.5 million that would have been stolen, and the family home was stolen, all the stuff in Macquarie Bank. The whole thing has actually been a gift for us, because in the greater dream of the man, this man is producing from the garden and those who support it is beyond $4,000, guys. It's beyond millions and billions of dollars.
But this is printing your own money. You want to print your money, grow food.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So don't lose sight. So you've got to always be aware that while you're using the money of the system and using the system to build the bridge of kingdom to get out, you've got to make sure you are on the ball with your senses, so you know where fantasy is, and that you're not going to bring fantasy across the bridge and let fantasy loose on the other side in a land of what we now call kingdom, because you'll destroy everything of your good heart. You've got to rat it all out. So you've got to know what is sense and what is nonsense, and not be trapped by it. So get out of the confusion, get out of the doubt and the uncertainty. Yes, we're all compromised. Yes, we've all been experimented on. Yes, it is a realm of Frankensteins. Yes, there are spare body parts for Frankensteins. There are spare makeup for Frankenstein. There's spare social engineering boutiques for Frankensteins. There's Ken and Barbie everywhere, because fantasy is Ken and Barbie, the Barbie dolls. That's the lie we live. Ken and Barbie is new age. Ken and Barbie is conscious. It's conscious Ken. It's conscious Barbie. You can listen to Conscious Barbie talk.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Conscious Barbie. I'm Conscious Ken. And I do no harm. And I'm a lawyer. And I make money. And I do the right thing. I'm not going to make sure I go green. We're going to do everything green.
They make sure children play with dolls too, eh? To really put that into our head too, that we have to become like dolls.
Well, that's why we talk about a lot of our early videos, pre our interviews with you, which people can go back into the YouTube channel and find those videos, because the storytelling is what gets the child to form the costume of Superman or Spider-Man or Superwoman or Alice in Wonderland or whatever, and that is the same costume of fantasy. We assimilate. We become assimilated like drones to the Borg collective, in the religion of the Borg archetypes. You know, the demagogue of the Borg. You know, with the queen of the Borg. And the point is that if that's all we know, that all we can do is pantomime fantasy from so young, we'll pantomime the fantasy as a grown-up man, grown-up adult with names, running around in the system as fucking liars all of the time. We need everyone in the religion of the government and the religion of the religion and the religion of the law to give us what we want, because fantasy needs all those things. You need a broken-willed man to be the blue collar, the white collar, to be the slave, to do everything, so you can have everything, so you can run around and be the fucking slave, walking around as, yes, I'm a man of peace, I'm a free man, I go to election, I'm a good law-abiding citizen, I go to my elections, I pay my taxes. Not realizing the bigger picture of slavery.
I would like you to comment on this here. The modern, that's again my brother Shalong, our brother Shalong. He's not mine. He's our brother. And he's there in the chat. So big up for our brother Shalong with his comments, very on point. And go read them on the videos if you want to have the whole comments from Shalong. I suggest everybody here listening, go on the channel and check in the video Shalong's comment. Check it out. Here he says, the modern system is simply an illusion to give the impression the system is spontaneous and uncontrolled. Random, however, only one entity owns the entire thing. Lucifer, Satan. We, the people, also play our parts in the deception, no matter the belief system, etc., that we have. Modern law makes it possible for all people to be protected while partaking in commerce. In addition, the e-globalization cult and their model was designed for this purpose, to consolidate world dominion under it.
Yeah, here's another one to look at that inspired me from listening to that. The water of man's breath is like plasticine, and our thoughts is what we use to make the shapes as the plasticine. Basically, we're dreaming through the water of our breath, creating shapes out of the dream of life that is the water of our breath. So if another man can put a thought in your head, because remember, thoughts are dreams, dreams are thoughts. And if we direct our life force energy to that dream, and that dream happens to be fantasy under the guise of reality, because we believe fantasy to be reality, because we've still got a broken will, we will make shapes, plasticine shapes. Or imagine kids in a sand pit playing with sand and buckets and trowels and making shapes. The water of man's breath is the shape of man's dream of life that we sense before us. If we can remove the nonsense, we can change the shape of the dream of life back to one of sensory reality and not one of nonsense reality, the fantasy of reality. And that means that each of us needs to withdraw from making those shapes, which means we stop using money. We stop going to the banks. We stop paying the taxes because that changes the shape. We stop relying on their law. We stop listening to their judges. We stop listening to their politicians. We stop listening to their armies. We stop listening to fucking everything that's come from education and through social engineering. We just turn it all off. Gone. Stop making those shapes. And so the power is in our hands with each of us, in the shape of the dream of life that we want to impact others with. So do we want to make shapes of fantasy and pass that on to our children? Do we want to pass all the future of all our descendants to come with more fantasy, which only means destruction and devastation to the living dream? Because that's all you can do. All the wild fantasies here, we've had to destroy reality. Living things that have a living purpose, that are not dead corpses, that move and walk and talk and think and feel and poo and wee and negotiate and do everything themselves, which is what creatures and insects and inanimate things like rocks do. They all do it, and the water. So the living dream of man's life is man's living soul, and when you connect with your sense, you sense the magnificence of the living dream of man's life, because that is the shape of man's dream, as the mountain, as the rivers, as the tribes, as the brothers and sisters. It's undefined. And the lie has deceived everybody on all sides from this. So you've got to return to the living dream. And that is undefined, not the Arthur Christian dream. You've got to connect to your sense and make sense, so that the influence of fantasy, that is the conversation in your head, don't filter anything you're hearing or seeing through fantasy, which you do when you're listening to the alphabet definitions in your head, because that will keep the shapes of fantasy formed in the dream of life. So you'll still have concrete, plastic, and steel, and telecommunications, and microwaves, and radio waves, right? And while you do that, the morgue gallon of chemtrails. Remember, chemtrails is in the atmosphere, but it's actually the breath of man. It's our breath. The shapes are made in our breath, because everything is our breath. It's our living breath, co-creating the living consciousness, right, of the living soul. The chemtrails is disfiguring the shape, introducing a range of things that are unnatural, like mold, fungus, barium, and all kinds of absorbing materials, because the ritual of satanic sacrifice, look, it's not just the death of the living that's found in food preservatives everywhere to make man cannibalistic and make man aggressive to another man, because that's what you're eating. When you eat food preservatives, you're eating body parts of man. That's why they got you to eat animals and hunt, because it makes you aggressive to another man. The information of the trauma, of the torture, of all those under the satanic rituals, again, refer to Darkness Visible Part 5 and the pictures. The sacrificing of every innocent child, everyone that was kidnapped, to be brought into these rituals. That's why minions go missing all across Earth every year. This morgue, the whole of Earth is a morgue. It's a funeral. It's a death. And the gallon is a gallon, because gallon means gallon in Roman. Gallon, morgue, gallon is gallon. And if you look at the breakdown of gallon, it's a bowl. And if you look at the rituals and the Darkness Visible, the torture with the broken will, they drip all their blood into the bowls of the gallon. They pour it, they get their breath. And the fucking chemtrails is this horror spread everywhere. It's not about genetic manipulation in that way. It is not about weather modification. It's about the shapes of man's dream of life in the water of our breath. And if you let the emotion of all this, because you're breathing it, the chemtrails is landing on the garden, it's landing on all the trees, it's landing on the cars, it's landing on your clothes and the clothesline, it's landing on the fucking streets where you walk, it's landing everywhere. And then it gets picked up and moved around by all those who are walking and talking and thinking and feeling and pooing and weeing. And the information of this distorted shape is the trauma, the horror of everyone they ritually sacrifice, because they want to bring everyone to their knees to such a horror to bring in this golden remedy. Because if you can create the extremes so far, so polarized in this duality, this lie of duality, the darkness of this horror will make the lie, the glory of their lie, look so fantastic in contrast that you get sucked into it and accept the New World Order through the water of your breath, through the shape you make with your compliance and acquiescence to the alphabet thoughts in your head that you're thinking, because that's where you make the shapes of fantasy. That's why they had to wait to get everyone educated sufficiently, and everyone's been mediated through the media, right? Everyone has been drugged through vaccinations. There's a whole range of things going down here to prepare.
So to say that we become more awake every breath we take is very right.
If the intentions are pure and sincere, and we're doing it through our senses, yes. But in most cases, nearly all cases, not, because it is coming out of the definitions that define waking up. The waking up is still defined. That's not a waking up. Because if it was a real waking up, these people would not be in the system of slavery. All those waking up are going to work. They pay taxes. They glorify consciousness. They glorify the magnificence of life, but they're fucking in a slave system, right? And remember, and the whole cunningness of this thing will be built out of a quota system. It'll look like tithing. They'll use words like gift, as in a gifting economy. But it's tithing, because you are compelled to perform for the religion of the Federation that's protecting the Pax Romanus, because it is a Pax Romanus. We're still under a peace treaty with the oppressors, the invaders, the conquerors, right? When the Roman legions invaded and conquered, there was a treaty after all those were murdered. But the Romans are in power, and the tribe still has some kind of freedom to live, but they're under a Pax Romanus, and they will have to feed the Romans. The Romans will need somewhere to house their legions. And then the information networks and channels and commands of the religions, because it goes from one conquered tribe to another, and Rome must maintain its power and control. So all the roads of Rome must be maintained. So it's a Pax Romanus road full of peace treaty slaves in the system, still under the control of Rome, but not Rome as in the Jesuits and the Black Pope or the White Pope. It's not. It's the occultists of the high priesthoods of Freemasonry who craft the water of your breath streams that you dream, they make shapes in.
So we're not even talking about Black Pope here, then.
No, and that's all bullshit. It's all red herring.
That's all
That's why it's
bullshit.
played out in the media. That's why it's all played out. That's why you get all these disclosure things coming out. And you all this massive disclosure stuff coming out everywhere. All types of. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Because it's only in the religion of the system that this is happening. It's not happening in nature. Undefined reality amongst tribes of man, undefined. It's only happening in the defined fake dream worlds where you see all this disclosure, where the David Icke comes out to reveal the truth about Christianity and the Virgin Mary and the Christ and the God, all these symbolisms that come with it. Because these are the trickery of the occultists of the predecessors. But what it does, if you can let the darkness become so true in the horror, the David Ickes who reveal it become glorified, and they become someone you trust, and you let them influence you, and they will shape your consciousness for you, and they'll shape your freedom for you, because all of them together will all be pointing at the remedy. All of them together. They're all fucking liars. Watch out for Max Eigen. Watch out for Santos Bonacci. Watch out. They are all in on it. None of them will interview us with a full open discussion. They won't do it because it will destroy everything that they stand for. And then they have to lie by saying they have to give up the oath they have to their brethren and their brotherhoods of their religions, of the occults, those sects and societies and fraternities where they're all in bed with each other in Babylon.
In Babylon.
Right? So you've got to get your head around this stuff. The truth is, it's your living soul. The remedy is not out there. The remedy is local. It's never, ever been outside of local. Because you, the man, already is local. You are the man already are in nature, in paradise, undefined. So the remedy is returning to undefined life, which means you've got to let go of all the strings that pull you as the child that wears the Superman costume, that runs around as in the fairy tales and all that stuff. Because as an adult, you're running around as the defined freedom. You're running around as the defined sovereign. You're running around as the defined Christian. You're running around as the defined Jew or Greek or Buddhist or Muslim. You're running around the defined Aussie in law. Get past all this. Who you really are is the man of sense. And the more you let go of the conversation of these strings that pull you into the religion of government and law and all this stuff, where all the psyops are played out, you're no longer feeding it, which means you're no longer a man needing slaves for you to live your life. That makes you a true free man. That's a real free man. So the hard work is unplugging. Unplugging.
The other day, I got something for you on this. Hold on. The other day I was on Facebook and Naaman, a reggae singer, posted something and I shared it on my Facebook as it really got me to the heart. And he said, strip me off, reveal me, take off my mask, my name and my belief, take away my fear and my certainty, leave me with my core and its urge to love.
And it's undefined.
I loved it. I was like, wow.
Watch out for the children of Bob Marley, because they're all in the system singing the songs through reggae of love and freedom. But they're all psyops. Bless their good hearts and their good intentions. They have not woken up to the bigger picture yet. And watch out for all the artists.
No, this I can sense it. I can sense that they're not all awake to the big
remember
picture.
this. Remember this. It was always the good-hearted that led man to fall. It was always the good-hearted that led man to war. It was always the good-hearted that led man to murder and suicide. It was always the good-hearted that led man to lie. It's never been anything else but the good-hearted. So you've got to see the psyops for what it is.
Exactly.
You've got to see with your eyes, with your senses. You've got to be able to step back all the time and keep seeing the bigger picture. Because if you don't, you won't see the hidden hand of the occultists in there. Because they're so damn close to the truth where the lie is, and you don't rat it out, it fucks you. It destroys everything.
My son Gavin, 10-year-old, said Babylon. He said the life, he said Daddy and all this. He said it's like a puzzle. We have to put the pieces together to find out what it is. And so 10-year-old, and he's very, he's starting to see.
But all the time he's doing that, he's a slave in the system.
Yeah, but
when he learns not to do that and unplugs, and he has his dream, unique to him, he is unplugging. He will never unplug, Janik. He will never, like my children, they will never unplug until they return to the sense and stop playing with the puzzle. Exactly. Stop trying to make shapes out of it. Stop trying to put it together to make sense, because there is no sense there, right? Because that's what all the Christians have done when they became newborn Christians. They brought the puzzle together with their Jesus, not realizing through the water of their breath that they are self-fulfilling the image with every other man who breathed the dream of Jesus or breathed the dream of the Virgin Mary, who breathed the dream of God. Because remember, it's their good heart. Each of them has a good heart, and they're directing the sentiments of their good heart into the inculcation of the religion of Christianity. And it's there where they get healed, where they experience all those phenomena, where you see the weeping of the Virgin Mary on concrete or the blood dripping down the wooden cross. We create this. We're creating it. Everything. So we continue being attached to the religion as what the New World Order will be, thinking that's where our freedom is. And all the while we're believing that we're heading to the afterlife to sit by our favorite God and favorite Jesus, right? Or as a cultist, to create a new universe where I'll be king and lord over my own universe. It's the same deception. It is a deception. Right?
But it's their deception. It's not ours. That's the thing. It's
their ours
deception.
While we play with the puzzle. It is ours while we play with the puzzle.
Yeah, while we play with the puzzle.
With the thoughts in our head, we think somewhere in this will give us remedy. We are only recreating the religion because while we think we're good-hearted and we're doing the right thing with doing no harm to earth, we must return earth to green, the religion of the system still comes into the green of earth.
Someone asked, why would they lie? Someone's asking in the chat here, and that's a good question. She said, she said, you don't like Santos, Ike, or Egan. Why do they lie?
Because they're confused. They're confused. Why? Because one, there's only two possible scenarios. They've created the Superman costume of what's become David Icke, and they love it so much, they really believe what they're doing, all the definitions that define their reality, and that's what they're doing, and they really believe it to be true, right? But we suspect more than this. They made oaths to those in the high levels who are their masters, under oath of death, to their children, to their partners, to their lives, to their careers. And the fear of that makes them kowtow to the line. They must operate within the script of what they are performing because they're all actors. Everyone in the system is an actor.
And there's
inside the satanic world is full of actors. As Shakespeare said, you know, what's the saying?
All the world's a stage.
It is a stage. It's all staged. It's staged. And so David Icke is staged as his fantasy. So they do this because the occultists at the high levels are all about power and control. They need the system where they believe they are the chosen ones, the bloodline chosen ones, the Israelites, over man, because they believe man has fallen and lost, and they must be the good shepherds to lead man. So they've been deceived into all this kind of shit. So either it's a rolling stone out of control and they're performing the lie and they don't know how to get out of it. And that's why we do what we do, to inspire them. Get out of there. Stop fucking lying. Reclaim a living soul of the man you've been gifted with. Why do you want to commit suicide? Because it's eternal death. Because that's what a liar is.
Yeah.
See, so it's why they do it. Why do men and women go to jobs knowing they're causing devastation to reality? And they come and say, well, I've got to do my job. I've got to make a living. I've got to keep food on the table. I've got to keep feeding my kids. I've got to look after my wife. I have all these responsibilities. I've got to be a good man. I've got to pay my taxes. I've got to do this. You see, all this comes into it as well. So in the scheme of everything going on, we carry out the evil of the good-hearted man because we don't know who else we are or what else we can be because the confusion still reigns. We don't know who we are. So we are confused. And while you are confused, you can carry out the most despicable evil possible, believing you're doing the right thing, believing you are true. Just remember this, fantasy is in our image. And when you see only through the eyes of fantasy, and that's all you know because in your head is all the ABC spinning of every definition that formed the fake persona of fantasy under the name you believe you are, in the life you live, in the suburb, city, place where you are, under the cult of the race, type, culture, creed you've been defined by, under the interests of your passion, the way you want to direct this good heart, as in regreening the earth. I want to become more organic, so I'm going to buy I'm not going to buy non-organic products. I'm going to buy organic products, but they still come in plastic bottles. They still come in cans and packaging. You're still going to the supermarket of fucking hell. You see, so the biggest picture of all is one of our brothers made this all up. He stepped outside of his tribe and planted dreams amongst all his tribal members and families and began this manipulation. Now, this is another story. We touched on it in other videos. But the point is, everything has come out of that. And everyone on all sides, apart from this man, have been manipulated. And that's how we carry out the good guys and the bad guys, the dark side and the white side, the left and the right and the up and down. All this is fake. And all the occult is rooted in this mysticism. Because there is no mystery. It's playing, like you said, with your boy playing with the puzzle. That's the mystery. And while you do it, you're confused. You don't know who you are. Because if you knew who you are, you wouldn't do it. Why would you play with fire, knowing all it can do is burn and destroy reality, the living soul?
Why would we play with the puzzle? Yeah.
Why would we do it?
When everything is already here, everything we need is already here. We don't need.
If we let our children be brought up by nature, we don't interfere. Yes.
Exactly. Hey, Arthur and Fiona, thank you very much for coming on again. It went so fast. 2 hours and 15 minutes went like that again. It's always, look, we've been doing a lot the last 2 months. I'll leave you in your garden for a bit. That's what I said. And maybe next year we can do another series together. We will stay in touch anyway. I'm always on your Facebook and that.
We need to be focusing on the real creations of kingdom. And this is, I just stress the point. If those of you want to support the living dream that we hold, and you want your dream to be held, we have to use the system. If we want to break Rome and Babylon down from inside, if you want to completely destroy it, we have to be the very destruction of it. So we have to be in it and of it and change it.
Be the change.
By using it to bring it down so that fantasy no longer exists, and that all our brothers and sisters are in undefined land, undefined reality, undefined lives, where there is no borders, no passports, where there is no race, culture, creed, no titles, no standings, no exclusivity or privileges, nothing.
No suffering, no ego.
Nothing, because we're not doing harm anymore.
Exactly.
So the bridge we build is inside the system itself, with the intention of holding, because we hold the bigger dream, to cause it to dismantle as we expand the living dream of our senses. But we don't pass the legacy of this on to our children for them to carry on the baton of the system. We must not be the relay that passes the baton on. So we've got to get our kids to cross the bridge and self-destruct the whole of this system and everything they're tied to it. So they have to learn to stand on their feet and be a man in freedom, being responsible. And when we recreate food forests and let food forests expand, we no longer have to be working in the garden either, because it's already taken care of. And then we have more time, freedom to contemplate on even bigger pictures.
Yeah, food forest, it says it's regenerate by itself. It's a forest. The forest always grows. There's always food growing in the forest. So it's the same with food forest. I understood the principle. I was watching a couple of videos, and a guy had grapes constantly growing. He said we started that food forest 5 years ago. I think it's Sophia. She's here in the chat. I saw her, and she shared a video on Facebook, and I watched it, and very inspiring. That's what we got to do, the food forest. That's what I'm going towards, a food forest. I want to print my own money, like I said. So it's by growing food. It's it's a must for everyone also to avoid the nonsense, poison and shit. So
the great challenge then is, how do you unplug from the local council? How do you unplug from the contracts with the government of Freemasons, that where the land title deeds are? Because the land title deeds that sits on the land, right, is the curse, the original curse. Yeah. So you've got to actually go and visit the priests. You've got to confront them. You've got to actually be active and tell them, this land is not owned by anyone. This land is not under your jurisdiction. You don't talk to them as a slave. You don't answer them. You're just giving them full disclosure. Or you just do it anyway if you want to, with others, right? But be aware, you are dealing with fantasy, and they will send armies of fantasy at you.
Awareness. Awareness precedes change, so we must be very aware.
Just watch out for the connection to fantasy and how we do not pass it on.
That's it.
So it's real interesting. And the other thing is, in the food forest, when you're eating directly from the forest, you're healing things beyond current comprehension. You don't go to the forest and transform it into heat and process it and turn that into cooked food, because that distortion is the good-hearted of man's fallen state being repeated, right? And it's toxic, and it shuts our senses down because we can't sense an even bigger picture of our glory, of our true glory.
Yeah. We need the enzyme
So
in the food, the living stuff.
You eat the berry right there. You eat the leaf right there. When we do this again, we'll end up eating less and less, to the point, maybe when we've restored the food forest, the pollen will be so rich and the oxygen of our breath so intense, we become breatharians again. Yeah. Naturally, without having to be defined. We're not following the yellow brick road of what it is to be a breatharian. It just happens. Because the food we eat, you got to remember, the dream is a living dream. So the dream feeds us.
Yeah.
It was feeding us before even the shape we formed.
So, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Arthur. Thanks, Fiona. Again, I can't thank you enough for everything you have shared with us, all your insight here that you have shared with us. And there was a lot of people in the chat tonight. Lots of love. I see people have love for life. That's what we want. Love for life. More love. More love, more life. That's only what we have to focus on. Love and life.
I want to share one more thing.
Yeah.
We're not a charity. We don't put boxes out there for people to come and give us money because we want it. However, if you are inspired and you'd like to support what we're doing, you're most welcome to bring your body here and do physical labor. You're most welcome to direct fictional dollars to Fiona's ANZ bank account. You're most welcome to send tools that we need, all kinds of things for us, because we don't do anything else. Our commitment is to this dream. In spite of us and Fiona being contracted in the system, we're working together peacefully inside it to grow it. So don't think just listening to this video is enough. You've got to remember, for every time you listen to this video, there's multi-thousands of Max Eigans out there running their psyops. So you've got to either make your videos and put them up, or you download these videos and put them up and be active and confront people everywhere. Don't worry about the emotional attachments, any outcomes, or what others think about you. Don't go bringing people down who have no malevolent intent. Just sense people, provoke people, get them thinking about things, get them seeing the slave system, how it really works, right? So we're not alone. We're not alone. But it does work more powerfully when we have a team effort of brothers and sisters who become the wind under each other's wings as we raise each other up through our labor, through our willingness to direct life as energy. Don't just think about Arthur and Fiona. Fucking do it.
That's it.
Be it. Don't just think about it. Be it. Do it.
Remove the blinder. That's it. Remove the blinder and do something with your life. Remove the blinder. Live your dream. Rise and shine. That's my message, and I stick to it. I don't care what people think.
Something to worship. Don't hold it up as anything to worship. Don't turn this into self-obsession.
No, but that's the message I have. Live your dreams and do something with your life while you're alive. So I'm sticking to this. It's too confusing out there. It's too much confusion out there. I gotta create a living soul. I have enough of the dead world and the dream of hell and all that stuff. So thank you very much again. I can't. There's no words to truly describe my recognition for everything you have shared there.
The living soul has no audience.
Yeah, exactly. The one day I'll move out the internet. It's just now. For now, that's what it is. But for sure, one day it's not gonna be like, I don't know. For like I said, while you were gone, there's an inner purpose. We all have the same, is to wake up, to freaking awake. But the outer purpose can vary, can change over time. I still have a long way to go in this dream of life. So it's unfolding. It's unfolding. I let the love flow. And I carry myself with
that judgment, bro. Each of us comes to it our own way, and that's why we don't. I got to contact Jabber again soon. I'm gonna unblock him from Facebook, and to see whether that real relationship was going to continue on, or whether he's decided that's it, right? So we're going to do that with others that things like this have happened. But hey, we each got to do it. So we sense the intentions. It's all in the intention.
That's it.
So when we're there to help each other, point out, hey, watch out for the self-obsession. So it's good to bring others close to us. So because the critical thoughts of others can point things out that we might have blind spots and we're not seeing it. So welcome that. welcome the effort of others that come and provoke us, because it's been all those people that have helped us to be where we are now. It's no way we could have done this on our own without all those other brothers and sisters.
That's it.
So it's a team effort. Get out there and do it.
Live it up. Live it up, brothers and sisters. Live it up.
The audience is the occults.
That's it. We're out. See ya.